One of the things about a fear-based belief, for example, is if you're trying to go out of your comfort zone and you have all that fear, it's really just that fear-based belief doing its job, because it essentially knows that if you do that thing, you get out of your comfort zone, it no longer has control, so to speak, and it will fall away. And one of my favorite sayings is, you will only find more of yourself in the unknown. You have nothing to be afraid of.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks so much for being here today. This is my guest today, Evan Halsey, and we've got some really cool things to talk about in terms of spiritual journeys and self-discovery. So, Evan, is there anything that you would like to say to start us off?
First off, thank you, Josh, for being your authentic self, creating this podcast platform to give people a community and help us grow. Admittedly, this is my first podcast, so, I will be a little bit nervous throughout this process, but, the only way to get through something like this is rip the Band-Aid off and just do it. So just wanted to say thank you and hello, everyone. My name is Evan, and I am just a curious mind that is just figuring out what life is and learning along the way with everyone else.
I think that's why I was pretty excited to have you on as the first guest, because you and I are both kind of cut from the same cloth in the sense that neither of us really had a quote-unquote teacher to help us along this whole journey, and that we both kind of put it together ourselves over the last few years. And I think that will hopefully be inspiring to other folks who are along the same path and listening to probably all of this kind of stuff that we're about to get into here. So with that being said, what has the last few years of your journey looked like for you?
So, of course, it's had its ups and downs. I think for everyone, it starts off with, could be a trauma, it could be some kind of traumatic event, something that really shakes them up and makes them reevaluate, maybe their life, or ask, who am I? Why am I here? And we all have, our respected upbringings and our beliefs, and, we have to at times evaluate those. And, for me, of course, there was a significant kind of a breakaway where I just felt like I was spinning my wheels in life and there's got to be more to it. And so from there, the question that we all ask ourselves, why am I here? Who am I? And from there, it was a journey of exploration and just seeking. And, like you already stated, it was something that, when you're doing it alone, it requires so much discernment, because it's very easy to end off in a field somewhere. So over time, you start seeing patterns, and you slowly start piecing together a massive puzzle that seems to transcend time. And you go through a period of, am I crazy? And once you finally, you kind of sit more into it, you get really adjusted into that feeling, and, you explore more of what maybe some of the themes are that you've started to accept. You start reaching out and trying to find like-minded individuals, and, is there a community for this? And what you'll find is, if you're having these types of thoughts and you're going through these types of an awakening, so to speak, a shift, know that you're not alone. But, I think the whole world to an extent is going through this together. So, so here I am kind of voicing my experience so far, and hopefully it can inspire others to maybe explore more about themselves.
Yeah, most definitely. What have you noticed in the last couple of years in terms of larger trends going on in the world, with everybody sort of being on their own kind of journeys, at least in this area that we're kind of talking about today?
I think one thing that's really important is respecting everyone's version of truth or their perspective of reality, because it's very real for them. And that's something, it took me a little bit of time to kind of come to my own realization, because, once I started piecing together all of these puzzle pieces, for me, you develop a little bit of, I guess, what's called a spiritual ego. And, you want to maybe overshare or try to help everyone else. You have maybe a positive intent, but, it can be harmful in that way. So for me, it's really beautiful to see when you step back and you're present in the moment and just admire the beauty of where everyone is at, and realize that, there's definitely something happening energetically throughout our planet right now. And, I've been in cells about 10 years now, and just being in cells, I love people. If I didn't love people, I wouldn't be doing cells. And, I like just sitting down and talking with someone. And for me, I like to ask a little bit more difficult questions and, be respectful to their boundaries, but at the same time, just be curious. And through all ages that I've talked to the past 10 years, I've seen them slowly move towards a more exploratory type way of thinking. And it seems like everyone is aware that we're moving towards something. And, it's important that kind of where you're placing your energy. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Because I think that's a really important part of all of this. But it's positive. I see positive things.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. I think everybody in the last couple of years has felt that there has been a definite shift in the world, and what that looks like for everybody individually is probably a little bit different. But I think that as we're seeing, more of the light being shown on a lot of the darker things in the world, I think that's leaving people with more of a sense of where can I be a part of the light in that process and not be consumed by the darkness that's seemingly increasing. But I think, again, that's just because there's more light being shown on it, and that it's always been there as well. But now it's just more so in the open. And so with that, people are really looking for a deeper meaning, whether that's a round sense of faith or spirituality or whatever term that you decide to use on there. It's almost like we're starting to realize that we're more than just these physical bodies. And I think that is a shift that people are really starting to embrace, in the sense that, we have three parts of the mind, the soul, and the self. And so it's just like, as more and more people are sort of waking up to these ideas of wanting to have a deeper meaning, and that there's more out there than they might have been aware of. What's your perspective and your take on all of that?
So for me, this is a really exciting subject. And growing up, I was familiar with terms like astral projection and stuff like that, but it's something I've never really knew too much about. And over the years, there's been a group that has really helped me to better understand that phenomena, that, essentially we are, having a temporary experience as humans right now. And, we are an eternal spiritual being, at least from my perspective. There's a group that has done a really good job to educate the public on the simple fact that you are more than your physical body. And this vehicle that we're in right now is merely, the interface with this reality so that we can explore particular themes. The group is the Monroe Institute, and it was founded by a man named Robert Monroe. And I'm going to do my best to make sure I'm fact checking myself the best I can. So I'm not going to say too much. But ultimately, he, in some form of audio business, whether it was radio or television, I can't quite remember it to that aspect, but he had, an expertise with audio. And at the time, to my understanding, I believe that maybe he had some sleep issues, or maybe that he wanted to help others with insomnia or issues going into the sleep state. And he was exploring at the time, which was kind of an idea, but it wasn't really implemented, the idea of binaural beats. And, over the course of, suppose, a few years, he had built a team and wanted to explore what this could do for people that are having sleep issues. And a fun fact is, these turbine engines on jet, they're slightly off sync, because what was actually happening, if the jet engines were synchronized, it would actually create this vibration or frequency where it was making the pilots fall asleep. So he was kind of using that basis of understanding, well, we know frequency vibration has some kind of influence on the physical body and our reality. One night he was exploring one of the binaural beats. And for those that aren't familiar with what a binaural beat is, it's where you have a pair of stereo headphones, and one frequency tone will be played in one ear, another frequency tone will be played in the other ear. Now, they're very slightly different. One side, for example, could be 100 hertz. The other side could be 110 hertz. Now, there's a 10 hertz difference, and it's going to create a wave effect in the mind. And the brain is going to want to kind of equalize it out, and it's going to mimic the 10 hertz difference. So, you can induce particular brainwave states using binaural beats. So he was exploring with one of these tones late one night, trying to go to sleep. Him and his wife had went to bed kind of early that night and listening to the tones. Well, shortly after, he ended up waking up. And if I'm remembering the story correctly, he ended up waking up and he hit his head. And when he hit his head, he looked up and it was the chandelier for his bedroom. And at this moment, he looked down and he saw, basically he was floating, and there's this man sleeping with his wife. And him being curious, he's like, well, who would be sleeping with my wife? So he gets really close and he realizes that that's him. He's sleeping with his wife and he's out of his body. So for him, I think this is about 40, 50 years ago range when this actually happened. And this was a very traumatic and terrifying experience for him because he thought he was dead. He's like, I'm dead. I'm out of my body. This is a scary experience. And so, he gets back in his body, wakes up, and, it was a very traumatic thing for him. And I guess he had a doctor that he was pretty close to. And, he went and did, these blood tests and, assessment just to make sure that he's okay. And, everything came back resoundingly positive, psych tests and all. And so over the course of the time, he continued to explore with these particular tones, and he became more comfortable with this out-of-body experience, is what he called it. And, he would slowly experiment with walking maybe a little bit farther away from his body, going into the other room. Maybe can I walk through walls? Can I float out of the house? How far out in the atmosphere can I go? So this was really the beginning of the Monroe Institute. And, he gathered a team, Tom Campbell, a lot of folks know Tom. The Monroe Institute has been known to create, the hemi-sync process, gateway process. And he's, over the years, Bob has passed away now, to my knowledge. But the Monroe Institute continues this study of consciousness. And using these binaural beats, he's established a program called the Gateway Voyage, or, the Gateway Experience Tape. And it's really specialized to teach individuals, not necessarily more so to leave the body, but also to tap into more of yourself and more of the reality that is happening outside of us, past these five senses that we have. It's a very exciting topic. I really like it. I personally have not had an out-of-body experience, but ironically, this Saturday, I am going to a retreat to the Monroe Institute to do the Gateway Voyage, and maybe I can be back on at some point and we can talk about that then. But yeah, so it's really exciting, and I encourage others to look into it. It's super interesting that it's almost like science fiction, but it's just something that we are able to do.
I think that science fiction over the last 40 years has really given us a great idea of what to expect is potentially possible, and, even maybe remind us of some of the abilities that we have lost, and the fact that in a lot of ways we are multidimensional beings, and the fact that there are definitely different planes of frequency and energy, that lots of different things that we might not be able to see are certainly operating on. I liken it to the sense that, everybody knows that we need to breathe air, but we can't see the air, but we know it's there, right? So it's I think it's going to be an interesting time as we're moving into this new phase, and we're finding out more and more that the split between science and magic is really not that far apart. And I think that is something that will continue to develop over the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. I think it's just going to keep expanding as we continue to evolve our consciousness, evolve our technology, and everything along those lines. Especially as I think you and I have briefly discussed how this is a time where we're definitely seeing a split in our reality. And as someone who you and I both have studied pretty intensely, Bashar has mentioned that you can choose which reality that you're going to be a part of. I know I, for one, am someone who wants to be on the side of the future that is going to include peace and love and joy, and would love to see the age of fear and suppression of information end as well. But what are your thoughts along those lines?
So I absolutely agree. If you want to call it like dimensions, just the dimension that we currently reside in, the third dimension, is kind of this illusion of separation. And fear seems to be a big part of it as well. And this has been going on for, I guess, generations and generations, previous civilizations that, embodied the earth. But for me, I think at the core of all of this, we have to realize that we are all connected to some degree, even if it's just the basic understanding that we're all made out of the same material. Like, we're in this reality and this couch is technically made out of the same stuff I am. So if you just really simplified it at the most basic level, it's essentially consciousness. And I think as we continue to develop and raise our own awareness and expand our own consciousness, we really will start to understand that, we are all connected. And, if I were to judge you, I am only judging an aspect of myself. And it goes into the line of the same thing. If I were to, harm you, it would essentially be, I'd be harming an aspect of myself. So I really agree with the idea of we're moving out of this idea of separation, even to the extent of, these imaginary lines that we've created on the planet that are borders, countries, cities, so I really see us all moving into a place where there is a sense of unity. It doesn't have to happen overnight. Of course, it'll be probably a slow transition, but we are moving into that state of essentially understanding that we are all brothers and sisters here, and we're all exploring this land where we're playing with the idea of separation, where we kind of cut ourselves off from the rest of ourselves so that we can explore who we are through a new perspective. Which I think is super cool. And that kind of goes into a fun channel text if anyone's interested, the raw contact, the law of one. That's a really fun material if anyone is interested in more of that broken down. But the other part of that question is fear. And fear, to my understanding, is connected to love. There are two slipstreams. So the opposite of love is not hate, it's fear. And it really makes sense, for example, where let's say you have a child and you love that child. There's a lot of fear associated with, I don't want anything bad to happen to that child. And so it's only natural for them to be connected. And it's something where you start transmuting these fears is using love. And as a society, we're moving towards embodying unconditional love for one another, for ourselves, and just for all life. And this is something where still a lot of these ideas is something that I'm still learning, so to speak. It is where I want to see the earth head to, the earth that, like you said, that, you want to be a part of. I want us all to love each other. Let's have fun. Earth can be a paradise. We are creators, and we can together create a reality where we all love each other. It's fun. And hopefully someday it can be something where maybe farther generations down the road, it could be where, where are you from? And you could say, I'm from planet Earth. So it's, I want us all to be a family, essentially. We're all in this thing together. So let's have some fun.
Yeah, I think we do a good job of making life way more complicated than it needs to be a lot of the time. And just I think a lot of that gets solved when you are able to actually step into somebody else's shoes and be like, I see that I am you from a different point of view kind of deal. And your pain is my pain. And, what are the things that we can do together to collectively make the future and the world a better place? Because I think a lot of that ties into like, we are actively always attracting the things that we are envisioning in our minds, right? Like we are the master manifestors, and the things that you are thinking and the things that you attract are the things that will come to you. And so if you are calling into yourself hate and fear and negativity and all of those kind of negative emotions, that is what will meet you where you are. And I think that the more of us that are able to tap into the frequency of love and joy and peace and harmony and unity, the more that we'll see that energy start to magnify and to expand exponentially. So I'd love to hear your take on that as well.
Absolutely. Kind of going back to Bashar, that guy, he really seems to know a lot. It really resonates.
He's got a couple things figured out.
Yeah. We can maybe talk about him too, but it is important. And I think this may be the most important thing of all, to be honest, is focus where you want to go. And this is nothing new to us. I mean, we write down our goals, we create visions, and we try to create a version of reality or a target for us to hit. And I think it's really important in today's age where it's very easy to get wrapped up in a lot of the doom and gloom and negativity, because we do have so many versions of reality that are playing out simultaneously. And if you're not careful, if you start focusing on that, you may get to be a part of that. And it's very similar to the analogy of, if you're riding a mountain bike through a trail and you see this one tree that you don't want to hit. And if you focus your energy on that tree, you increase the likelihood of hitting that tree a decent bit. So it's really no different. My advice with that would be focus your energy really just where you want to go. What does Earth look like for you? What kind of Earth would you want to be a part of? What kind of version of yourself would you like to be? Like, is there certain aspects of yourself that you would like to evolve? Maybe certain have no longer holding on to you, or traumas, or it's really unique to all of us. But where we place our energy is where we will go during these times of, it seems like there's splittings of Earth, so to speak. Make sure you know what your version of Earth looks like and just focus on that. And one of Bashar's formula has really helped me with my life. And I think that can help others if maybe they're having a little bit of issues figuring out what version of Earth, his formula, I'm going to try to do my best to recite it, but it's basically act on your highest excitement in the moment, the furthest that you possibly can, with no insistence of the outcome, while staying in a positive state of mind. And then the last part of it is, monitor your thoughts, always be evaluating your beliefs. If there's beliefs that no longer serve you, let them go. Yeah, so that's the formula.
I think the crazy part is that by following that formula, that is exactly how you and I were able to get connected, just through, again, sheer happenstance or coincidence, which we can argue about those if they exist or not, which the case is probably seemingly no, but that's exactly how we met. And it's just been through me following my highest passion and staying in a positive mindset and trusting that all of the decisions that I've made in my life have led me to this point in time and are leading me to the best possible version of my future that I could hope for. And when you have no expectation of what the future will look like, and you're solely focused on what are the things that I need to be doing now in this present moment that are going to attract that future to me, I think that's just been such the biggest mindset shift that I've taken into account recently. And that's also gone alongside with, like you said, monitoring where you're putting your energy, where you're putting your time, and where you're putting your attention, because those are arguably our most valuable resources that we have. And if you're placing them on areas in your life or people in your life that are not going in the same direction that you would like them to go, then you're working against yourself. You're not acting on the path of least resistance. You're actively creating resistance in your life by doing the things that you know are blocking that energy flow and your innate ability to feel that intuition of I really need to lean into this thing more, and I can feel every fiber of my being telling me, hey, go do this. And so the question is, why not?
We definitely get in our own way a lot. The physical mind that it thinks that it knows best, or the ego. And I can't tell you how many times in my life I could have had a different outcome if I had not overthought it and just acted on that excitement in the moment and not overcomplicated it. Having no insistence of the outcome has been what's been specifically so transformative for me. And I can't tell you how everything just fell into place so fast, like when you get out of your own way, so to speak.
I was going to ask you to dive into that a little bit deeper. What practical advice have you really noticed that has helped you along in your journey? Obviously, both of us, like I said, are kind of cut from the same cloth, that we've had to teach ourselves a lot of these things through just various podcast books, so listening to who's at the top level of all of this kind of knowledge to try to begin to piece some of this together. So what advice would you give to people that are either just starting out or are still on their own journey and are feeling like they're kind of alone as they're going through this process?
One important thing to remember is you are never alone. And not to get too deep, which I don't know how deep we can go on this podcast, but you have a whole team behind you. Depending on where you're at in your current beliefs, you have, an angelic team, you have your spirit guides, you have interdimensional ET team, you have your higher self, you have other aspects of your soul family that are out of the experience guiding you. So know that you're never alone. We're playing the game of separation right now, and you are eternally loved. I think one thing that really helped me, I felt like I had some kind of fear of abandonment or trauma that I couldn't find the source of it. And it seems like a lot of people have that fear of abandonment, unworthiness, and we may have never had a traumatic experience to cause that. And Bashar recently saw a podcast where he was referring to that kind of global sense of, it seems like we got this sense of abandonment. It's really just a side effect of being in this density, the third density, being in these human bodies and being so good at creating the illusion of separation that we feel like we've been separated from our pack or God, source. Like, if you have that feeling, know that, you are not alone and God is with you, and your whole team of helpers, teachers are with you. And at the same time, keep in mind, you're teaching them as well. This is not an easy experience being human. You come in here and you forget who you are, and you're just kind of wandering around and get beat up by life until eventually you start to figure it out. And like, well, wait a second, I can actually create my reality. Yeah, just keep moving forward, guys. There's a family out there. That's one of the reasons that I really want to create a community here where I live, here in Charlotte. I think creating a community where others that are maybe kind of new to all this, they don't have to go through that period of isolation as maybe long. And they could just jump right into a community and be like, you guys, hello, So, that's that.
Yeah, I think over the last couple of years, the biggest thing that I've noticed that has made an impact on me is just not feeling like I've had that sense of community. I have like some of the best friends that I've ever had in my life currently right now, but even still, I was looking for more folks that were interested in all of this kind of stuff that we've sort of been outlining here. And I think just that in today's day of, social media and how the last couple of years, everyone has just been much more isolated than they used to be. I think all of that is also contributing to the loneliness that we're seeing in people and the feelings of abandonment, because we feel like we've been alone now for the last little bit, and trying to get through that experience and the trauma that is left in our minds, and how we've concocted all of these stories about I'm unworthy and there's no one out there who will understand me. I think these are real, genuine problems that people are facing. And so I would say, if you can, there are more ways than you think, but to find that community. And one of the best ways that I've found to do that is just to dive into the unknown, do something new that you've never done before, go do something that's out of your realm of what you would usually do. And ultimately that has led me to living a much more fulfilling life and feeling more full in life, and has led me to meeting some of the most amazing people that I've ever come across in a very short amount of time, a very small amount of time. And I think for me, that's just been it's been so refreshing. I would say this year has been the year that I've met the most amount of people since before COVID. And I can't tell you what that's done for me in this last year. It's really been amazing.
That's so well put. These fear-based belief, for example, is if you're trying to go out of your comfort zone and you have all that fear, it's really just that fear-based belief doing its job, because it essentially knows that if you do that thing, you get out of your comfort zone, it no longer has control, so to speak, and it will fall away. And one of my favorite sayings is, you will only find more of yourself in the unknown. You have nothing to be afraid of. You know, if there's something that you want to do, if you have an excitement and passion about it, maybe you're afraid about what your family will think, or like, will I fail, or the fear of judgment of others. Am I worthy? Are people going to like me? Listen, I promise, guys, I promise that if you be your authentic self, someone is going to be just jumping up and down like they understand me. So be yourself, love yourself, and yeah, go into the unknown stuff there.
Without a doubt. I think we let the fear of doing something paralyze us so much more than the actual act of going and doing that thing. You know, if we get ourselves so worked up in our heads about, oh my gosh, like, what are they going to think of me? What if I say something wrong? What if I mess up? That comes with the price of venturing into the unknown. If you're going to reach out on a limb, you run the risk of falling off the ladder if you're trying to reach something up high, but then you also run the risk of you might get to pick the fruit. And I think it's just so rewarding when you do get to pick the fruit and you embrace the fact that, okay, yes, I'm feeling this way. Yes, I have fear around this. Yes, I have anxiety around this, but I'm not going to let that stop me from acting on the thing that I am passionate about. And I'm going to use that as a tool to trigger action instead of non-action, right? Like if you can use that fear and anxiety to move you forward, that is what those emotions I think are there for. At least that's what I figured out, is that we don't live in a time where we're really having to worry about flight or flight kind of deal, and where we're not having to fight off animals for food anymore. Like we have a lot more time on our hands to be able to think about all these things, but the innate mechanisms are still there within ourselves. So I think it's learning about how to transmute those kind of feelings to be of use to you rather than something that stops you in your tracks.
I think we try to outcast certain emotions. You know, of course, the goal is to just be in joy, so to speak, by, you know, following your passion. But sometimes on the path, you'll find certain obstacles are kind of inevitable for you. But when you are feeling that fear or that some of these lower emotions, like, you know, separation, maybe depression, maybe is a word, but maybe not a prolonged period, or even if it is a prolonged period, understanding that it's all for a purpose, so to speak, where once you understand that essentially creating your own reality, you'll look at it through a different lens. And if you always focus on the positive, you know, how could this be serving me? How can this help me? And if you really focus on that aspect of it, it can also continue to help drag you out of those maybe lower emotions that have a tendency to kind of cling on, but keep moving forward. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the best skills that you can learn is like how to figure out how to get yourself unstuck, right? You know, we get trapped in these patterns where we just, it's like you're going sledding down the same hill over and over and you're stuck in this rut. And I think that you have to find a way that works best for you to help you go form a new path down some fresh powder kind of deal. It's really amazing when you figure out, because and the only way that you're going to do that is ultimately is to face what is holding you there, right? It's to address the things that are directly causing you to be stuck there. And most of them are ideas that we've implanted in our mind about how things have to be or how things should be. And I think that so many people just get caught in that loop and they talk themselves into different ways of thinking about things and things that they have to believe. And they've just become so ingrained in their own programming that it's hard for them to step outside of themselves and take a look and be like, oh, why am I choosing to still do the things that I don't prefer? What happens if I start doing the things that I do prefer instead? And having that switch and that ability to just look at things objectively is a huge piece to how I've come out of some of the most troubling times for myself. Every challenge that I've faced in my life, and this has become a more recent discovery, but it's basically boiled down to this: I'm sick of feeling this way, and what am I going to do about it? You know, you have to have that awareness to see that something is bothering you, and then you also have to have the commitment to take action to be like, this thing that I'm letting plague me is no longer serving me. something differently.
Well put.
Thank you. Let's get into, what do you think the future of the human evolution path looks like, whether that be spiritually, whether that be from a self-improvement standpoint? What do you think that humans will be doing in the next 5, 10, 20, 50 years? Like, what does that timeline look for you?
So for me, it's really exciting, but it may sound just a little crazy for those that may be listening, depending on where we're at. So I think once you kind of got used to the idea that we are more than this physical body, we're eternal beings having these temporary human experiences, you start to understand that you really aren't alone. And that means on this 3D plane, we're also not alone. And there's other beings having these incarnated experiences, just like you are. It's just they have a different vehicle, so to speak. And right now we're in the human body. So for me, I think as we move from this third dimension of separation and fear and loneliness, moving into the fourth density of love and unity, as we go through this process, and as a collective, we start to embody that idea and that knowing, we're essentially attracting our soul family, our star family, these interdimensionals, extraterrestrials, interstellars, aspects of us that are maybe on a higher dimension, so to speak, maybe from a fifth dimension standpoint, coming here, meeting us, so to speak, in the middle, where we're in the fourth dimension and getting to unite with more of our family, ourselves. And for me, Bashar talks about it a lot, and I've heard quite a few other people talk about it, and some of the raw texts where Earth is in these 40-year cycles, and we just ended a 40-year cycle, and now it's time to really start focusing your energy where you want to go. And for me, I see that leading to contact, so to speak. So I do believe that we are slowly, over the next 5 years, going to start seeing signs of that. It could be in dreams. It could be one-on-one experiences. It could be in group settings. It could be you see an orb, like, the Bledsoes, shout out to them, Chris Bledsoe and Ryan and his family. They've started to have some of these experiences since really 2007. And, that's just one example. This world is a magical place. And I think we're really going to start to see that unfold over in our lifetimes, which is super exciting, because I want to be on a spaceship, just zipping out, just seeing other beings that maybe don't look like us, and just listening to their story. What is it like for you? But I do think that the future in our lifetimes involves joining our family in the stars and realizing we're really not alone, and we get to grow humanity, expanding consciousness with our alien friends, if you want to call it that. And that's where I see us heading, to be honest. And who knew that aliens would be a spiritual path? But somehow we're here, and it is.
I think yeah, 100%. I think it's less crazy to actively say this kind of stuff today, because there has just been so much more talk about what the disclosure will look like, and I think you're right. I think it will be very different than what we imagine, like a tinfoil or aluminum craft landing on the front lawn of the White House. I think it will come in a variety of different ways, and I think it definitely feels like that, as we're seeing just more stranger and stranger things zipping through the sky, and all sorts of different stories about people having seemingly miraculous encounters and all of this kind of stuff. I think it seems to be a natural progression, and definitely leading up to something. What that is, I can't fully say, but it definitely seems like we're approaching that in some manner. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be really exciting. And I think the future is definitely not set in stone. And I think that's why it's so important for us to be actively doing what we can in the moment, in the now, to call forward the future that benefits humanity most, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're doing it together.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's going to be, ideally, it should be a unification process where ideally we We stop looking at each other as, different races, different religions, all this kind of stuff. Like, we are one human race. And I think that as we approach that sort of level of understanding from a fundamental sense, lots of our problems will begin to dissolve, because I do think that a lot of the problems that we're facing today are spiritual problems, emotional problems, communication problems. All of these kinds of things will start to ideally break down as we continue to do the work on ourselves, right? And it has to start with us, and you can't keep playing the blame game. Like, eventually everybody's going to look themselves in the mirror and be like, okay, what are the things that I'm actively contributing to not bring forth the best possible future that we could create together collaboratively?
Your inner reality creates a reflection for your outer reality.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're approaching a spot where it'll be pretty good to wrap up, but in the spirit of the podcast that inspired this podcast of Next Level Soul, which, to those listeners who are aware, this next portion will sound very familiar. Yes, I took some inspiration for my thumbnails for what this video will end up looking like when it's fully published and everything like that, but I just think that these questions are too important to not be asked. We're going to do our quick rapid fire round here. So, Evan, what would you give as advice to a younger version of yourself?
I've heard this before, and you're on the right path. Just keep going and be you. Be unapologetically you, and that I want everyone else to do the same. Just be you.
Love it. Love it. How would you define living a meaningful life?
Acting in your highest excitement. Loving everyone equally, whether they're in the streets or it's your mom. Love everybody. We're all in this experience together, and at the end of the day, we deserve that love. It's the core of our being. And for me, a meaningful life would be one where I get to be of service to others and help them be more of themselves and realize that love is inside them as well.
100%. It's a lot easier to be you rather than somebody else. So, in spirit of that, what is love?
So I think about this a lot, and to be honest, I don't know if I have the words for it. Aaron Abke, I think, called it devastating bliss recently. That was pretty good. So it's something that I think our human language, where we don't really have the ability to convey wording for such a feeling, because it transcends this experience. It transcends time and space, and love. Everything essentially is made out of love-like consciousness. So if I get to be on this podcast again in the future, it'll be something where maybe I have a better understanding, and I've created a few different words to describe it. But at this time, I don't really have an understanding of it. So it's something where I'm still on this journey, and that's the exciting part. We're all learning together. So
I think that is totally an acceptable answer. In progress is definitely okay. How would you define God or source?
So it's everything. It's in us, it's out of us. There appears to be, I don't know if it's an individualized, this is also an in progress thing for me, to be honest. But to my understanding, it was that God was the original thought, and he had no reflection. And I'm saying he, just because it's what I've been kind of raised, but it's not non-gender, but it's this energy where it didn't necessarily have a reflection to see what it was. So it essentially expanded into infinite infinites, and everything is made of source, God. And what's really beautiful is your own crystalline energy inside of you is unique to you, and know that unique awareness inside of you can never die. And it is a gift from God, source. And I think living a life of service to others is kind of paying homage to that, because once you understand that you are essentially, in so many words, God as well, if you love God and you love yourself, love your neighbor, because by loving your neighbor, you're loving God as well.
Well said. And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
For me, it's connection. I love connection so much. I love connection with you. I love connection with, this audience. I love connection with, the other beings that are out of my five senses. I would love to connect with them. I would love to connect with the team that I just love connection. For me, that's what my purpose is. I see connection as being the catalyst of all, and I can't get enough of it. I just love everybody. So yeah.
Love it. Well, Evan, thank you for being on here today. Where do you have any social media that people can find more about you on that I can paste in the description below?
Yeah, so Evan Halsey, I have an Instagram, currently pictured as Batman. I haven't really modified it yet. Eventually, I'll probably start posting some stuff in this field on there. My Facebook, Evan Halsey. The Monroe Institute is my cover photo. And then to be announced is the group that we're going to be orchestrating here in Charlotte. It doesn't have a name yet. And so that's really exciting. But if you live in the Charlotte area, keep an eye out. It'll probably be on Meetup. I haven't figured out keywords yet, but Bashar may be one of them. So if you just Google Bashar and Meetup, I'm sure we'll pop up. And if you'd like to come say hi and connect, I'd love that.
Evan, this has been a blast, and we will definitely be having you back on. So thank you for taking the time to sit here with us today, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Josh, for having this platform. And I'm excited to see more people come on and in this grow, and we all learn together.
Let's do it, brother. All righty. Take care,
See ya.
everybody.